Now, let me turn to María Victoria Llorente. María is the Executive Director of Fundación Ideas para la Paz, one of the most prominent think tanks in Colombia on peace and security issues. She focuses on peace building, security policies, and organized crime in her work. As a political scientist, she has an impressive background on violence, security, and justice issues. Again, thank you for being here today with the panel. The floor is yours. Bienvenida.
Good afternoon, and I would like to extend a warm greeting to my fellow panelists and all who are joining us in this innovative dialogue. I would also like to thank United Nations for inviting me to this session as civil society. I will take this occasion to ponder on the challenges and opportunities associated with, of course, the implementation of the peace agreement in my country, Colombia, particularly in terms of the need to promote partnerships and synergies among states, businesses, and international actors as a fundamental element for adding the resources needed for making peace sustainable. Recently, the Colombian government estimated that the implementation of our peace agreement will cost approximately $47 billion in a 50-year period. In the next 15 years, we will have to dedicate 0.8% of our annual GDP to this task. So far, the state has committed to finance 85% of this budget, and the remaining 15% will need to be covered through international cooperation and private investment. So this implies a huge political commitment for the Colombian state. All of this is happening within a very troubled and uncertain political environment in Colombia, given the upcoming presidential elections and the continued questioning of the legitimacy of the peace agreement from different political and social actors. This leaves us in the middle of a significant challenge, overcoming the barriers that prevent actors from engaging in partnerships that could lead to the profound changes needed to integrate my country, to transform our rural areas, and to avoid major setbacks in our peace-building process. We all know that peace-building and the sustainable development agendas are deeply intertwined. Colombia has made a great effort to precise this relationship. Our national planning development has stated that 16 out of the 17 SDGs have indicators related to the implementation of the peace agreement, being only the exception SDG number 14. In addition, there is a coincidence in the timeline of both SDGs, which are planned for 2030, and the peace agreement implementation plan, which goes until 2031. The most obvious connection between these two agendas occur around the issues of rural development, considered one of the main root causes of our armed conflict. Its importance is reflected in the fact that it concentrates 85% of the total peace implementation budget. There is no doubt that the closure of gaps in rural areas are deeply related to the SDGs: poverty reduction, education, health, combating inequality, improving living conditions, and so on. Making this connection between peace building and SDGs explicit, both at the political and financial level, is paramount. But we have to go to the action, and we have learned in Colombia that there is a lot of distance from the saying to the doing. I would like to raise two questions, trying to illuminate the path of action. The first question has to do with the sequencing. When should peace-building financing give way to development financing? Or may they coexist in a blended, coordinated form? As we all know, making, maintaining, and building peace are not linear processes, as is also the case with development. There are many overlaps. A perfect example of the point I want to make is the coca crops problem in Colombia, which lies right in the middle of the intersection between peace, security, and development. At first, this matter needs both a security approach and peace-building resources within the stabilization phase. But if there is any expectation of durable and life-changing solutions over time, we have to move swiftly to look for resources under the development agenda. In Colombia, after 30 years of facing this problem without lasting successes, we are still debating about the framework to approach it. Is it security? Is it peace? Is it development? I would say all of the above. Now, the second question I would like to raise is how can we bring together and promote partnerships between actors that are scattered and that seem to have different funding priorities? And most specifically, how can we actively mobilize the business sector and move from the current crowding-in model to the crowding-out model to the crowding-in one? Although it has been said repeatedly that the inclusion of the business sector in the peace-building agenda is paramount for sustainability, we are far from making it a reality. Returning to the government data I mentioned before about financing of the implementation of the peace agreement, the overwhelming majority falls on the state. The contribution of the private ones seems to be completely underestimated. Until now, the business contribution has been limited to tax incentives to invest in areas most affected by the conflict. These incentives, by the way, have failed to unleash the participation of the private sector. As many business people claim, these incentives were never consulted with them. In Colombia, there are a few promising opportunities emerging in the area of social impact investment. Social impact bonds promoted between business foundations and the Inter-American Development Bank are generating employment opportunities for vulnerable populations. There are more than 30 investors in social impact sector which have reported a total of US 6.7 million in their assets. And currently, USAID is promoting partnerships in Colombia that involves private actors under the blending financing model to transform and create legal opportunities in troubled rural areas. There are also some promising news related to the private social investment, much of which is actually contributing to peace building, although not all businesses are aware of it. Of course, scaling up is critical, but there is hope with these blending opportunities. So, however, there is still much to be done, and I'm already wrapping up. So, there is still much to be done to get actors to work together in order to forge linkages between peace and development financing. It seems that the pieces of the puzzle are in front of us. There are actors with resources and rather straightforward complementarity between peace and development financing. The real challenges lies in exercising leadership and building up the willingness among actors to join the pieces. And us as civil society organizations are willing to help forge public-private pacts that are needed to really take advantage of this window of opportunity that the peace agreement in Colombia is giving us. Many thanks for your time.
Muchísimas gracias, María Victoria. Thank you very much for bringing this amazing experience from Colombia that I think is really showing a lot of lessons and a lot of opportunities in the way we rethink. And again, the opportunity for the Peace Building Commission and the Fund to be very much engaged in some of these critical areas that you mentioned. Let me quickly